Hi, my name's Marion Calmer, and I'm a farmer from Western Illinois. Today I'm going to be talking about the 7 steps to better no-till agronomic thinking. First off, I want to say thanks to the no-till farmer people for asking me to speak. I also want to say thanks to all of you for tuning in today. And I am coming to you from one of my heated shops. And for those of you that like antique farm machinery and especially antique farm trucks, in the background is my antique farm truck. It's a 1948 Chevy. It's a 5-window cab, and it has a few little upgrades, if you will. Small block 350, high-rise cam, Krager's 400 turbo trannies. So those are the kind of things that we get to do when we're staying home this year with COVID, is work on some of those projects. But I want to go through this today and hopefully give you some things to think about. I've been farming for 45 years. I love every minute of it. And in the middle 1980s, I started doing independent on-farm research. So I've been doing that now for 35 years. And then in the early 90s, took an interest in improving the performance of corn heads. And so I've been doing that for about 26 years. To give you some kind of an idea of where I live, I'm in Western Illinois, at the little red star there. We have silty loam soils. We have some flat black, very productive. Also, though very wet, retains moisture. One of the thoughts that occurred to me many, many years ago was made by Lord Kelvin, and he states, we can't improve on things we don't measure or research. And that's kind of been my train of thought ever since I bought my first farm. You can also notice on this slide on the right-hand side, we were with the neighbors. We have different planters, different row spacings, planting soybeans, and that was in the early years of doing on-farm research, and we ended up on the cover of Successful Farming. So gives you an idea, maybe team up with your neighbors or whatever, and do some of your own trial and error side-by-sides. But this gives you an idea of what my screen looks like when I'm on auto steer. In this particular case here, the yellow passes, the planter's set up for 30-inch rows. So we plant 30s, and then we skip a line, plant 30s, skip a line. And then we switch the planter over to 15-inch rows, and then we came back, and all of the dark green areas, then we're going to fill that in with 15-inch rows. The great thing is then that allows us to come back and yield check that and in the fall. So the 7 steps, and yours may be different, but these are just some of the things that I've learned over my career that I want to pass along to you. Number 1, common sense. I don't know how many times I've looked back over my career and said there was something that I missed. And this one example is going to be spreading dry fertilizer on top of the ground because it doesn't move. And I've been no-tilling for a long time, and I look back now and say, well, if the fertilizer doesn't move, chances are it's on top of the ground, not where the roots are at, and I've got some soil tests to prove that I've got a serious stratification problem in a long-term no-till environment. Number 2, we have to have a business train of thought to stay in business in agriculture today. I like to project a 35% return on investment, and here's why. We, as humans, myself included, overestimate income, underestimate expenses. Therefore, if we project 35%, then by the time we actually go to the field and grow the crop, I'm hoping by the end of harvest, I'm going to bring home a 10% return on investment. Number 3, exaggerate. The purpose of exaggeration is to make it easy for my mind to understand as I continue to get older. I like to make it easy and simple. And we're going to look at row spacings, and we're going to look at 45-inch rows compared to 15-inch rows, and we're going to exaggerate so that you get a good example of which way we should go. Conflict of interest is something as farmers, we rely on people to give us advice, whether we're buying seed, fertilizer, machinery, whatever. You also got to remember, though, that the person that's selling it, that's their job. And they're good buddies of mine, good Christian people, but again, at the end of the day, their job is to sell me seed or to sell me fertilizer. Do it right the first time. Oh my gosh, Grandpa used to say that all the time. You do it right the first time, you won't have to redo it. In this one, we're going to relate a little bit to combines. And I'm a big fan of threshing the green pods the first time they go through the chamber so that I don't have to send them through the return. And we'll show you how to do that. Use side-by-side comparisons. That was my opening example. Use your auto steer, use your yield monitor, and try something new. If my farm and I don't try anything new and I don't occasionally fail, then that means my operation's standing still. And everybody else is continuing to adopt new technology and they're moving forward. I want to be trying new things every year. And number 7, don't believe everything you read. We're going to show you a perfect example of an owner's manual in a combine. And so whether you're reading an agronomic newsletter, a mechanical newsletter, or your owner's manual to your combine, there's some stuff in there that is not accurate. Use common sense. So, went to no-till 30 some years ago, and I just continued to spread the fertilizer on top. Now we know that phosphorus only moves about 1 inch, maybe 2. Potassium moves 2, maybe 3. But they're not very mobile in the soil. Now nitrogen moves up and down all the time, but not phosphorus and potassium. So I set out some plots, and in this slide you can see we're spreading it on top the old-fashioned way, and our plots are 60 feet with phosphorus, potassium, 60 feet without, 60 feet with, 60 feet without, and we go across the field and then we yield check it. What I found out over the last 10, 20 years, when I'm surface applying P&K, I'm losing money. Again, I can't improve on things I don't measure and research. And if I hadn't been doing these studies, I wouldn't have noticed that this was a problem. At my farm, over the long haul, all the research that I've done, I'm just going to kind of sum it up right here. $1 worth of P&K is only growing me about 40 cents worth of grain. That's not a return on investment. That's not a sustainable thing. I'm going to go broke over the long term if I continue to do that. So over the past 20 years, the bottom end of this screen, you can see I spent $936 for P&K per acre, and it only grew me $395 worth of grain. Doesn't make a lot of sense. So I had to figure out, why is it that phosphorus and potassium were not making me money? So I wondered, because it doesn't move, am I getting an enormous amount of vertical stratification? And so we painstakingly took time to pull an 8-inch core, and then you can see here we cut it up. So we're looking at the top 2 inches, and then 2 to 4, and then we're looking at 4 to 6, and then 6 to 8. And we've most recently even gone one step further, and we're doing it every inch. And at some point in time, we will post this in our agronomy area of my website, calmercornheads.com, and you can go there and look at this stratification by the inch. I haven't got the results yet. So if we're talking about phosphorus stratification, what we're going to notice early in the plant's life, we're going to see some purple leaves. That's extreme. Now let's look at potassium. Got the same problem. It doesn't move in the soil profile. In 0 to 2, we're at 428 pounds per acre. All my potassium is right at the top. And we just moved 2 inches down, and now I'm below the optimum levels for potassium at my farm. And we move 4 to 6 inches, I'm at 172, and right at the bottom of the screen there, 6 to 8 inches deep, I only have 152 pounds per acre. So this is going to lead to potassium deficiencies, which can lead to green snap, stalk lodging, let alone a loss in yield. So it's got a chain of events that's really ugly. So this is long-term no-till at my farm. And of course, potassium deficiencies, we're going to see the burnt yellow edges on the leaves. So over my career, we've seen a lot of this switch over to grid sampling and variable rate and all of this fancy stuff, and everybody's got a lot of great equipment. We get a lot of great advice. This is one of my soil tests, and the tan area right here on the screen is we're at 268 pounds per acre. And then we move over to the right where the yellow is at. That's close to the buildings. This is actually on the far right-hand side is Interstate 74, if you ever go past Alpha. And you can see close to the buildings, we're at 334, which is normal because we had a lot of livestock. And so we spread a lot of fertilizer close to the buildings up there. So in this instance, we all get concerned about horizontal variability. And there's a 66-pound difference. So we're going to say, oh, we need to put more over here and not so much over here. But, you know, everything in life is relative. So let's talk about potassium variability or potassium stratification. From a vertical point of view, I've got, on the far right-hand side here of the screen, 276 pounds of variability from the top 2 inches to the bottom 2 inches in that 8-inch core. Now, the average is just fine. But where do the roots of a corn plant or a soybean plant, where do they feed? I mean, we don't, if we're going to feed our pigs, we don't put the feed 4 foot high and let the pig eat down here 4 foot below. We put the feed where the pig's at. We need to do the same thing with our corn plants and our soybean plants, is let's put the food where they're going to eat. So we, on the right-hand side, you look at the top of that screen and yeah, there's some roots up there. But if it's dry, nutrients don't move well into the corn or bean plant when it's dry. So I've got all my fertilizer where I've got the least amount of roots. And then we move down 2 to 4 inches and I've got more roots. And I move down 4 to 6 and I got more roots, and 6 to 8 and I've got more roots. At my farm, the common sense is telling me I'm putting it all on the surface. It stays on the surface, and every year my plants are sucking it from the 4, 6 inch, 8 inch level down below. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm a no-tiller. I know all about earthworms, and we all get a warm, fuzzy feeling, but mainly they're moving residue, and you can see these guys grabbing a hold of some cornstalk residue, some beanstalk, some wheat residue, whatever it might be. And they grab it, a mouthful, and they drag it down into their hole during the evening hours. So the majority of what's moving down in the hole with the earthworm is going to be residue. And then their castings are up on top. And it's a chain of events. It's supposed to help, but they're not getting it done fast enough at my farm. So, to take a closer look at this, the P and K, I can honestly tell you those plots are greener. I can also tell you I get an increase in yield, and I can also tell you that you really need them if you're chopping silage or you're cutting hay. At the end of the day, I got to make some money. Common sense. Step number 2, project a 35% return on investment. And we're going to talk about nitrogen here because it's a very powerful input that we use at our farm. The reason that we say 35%, because we as humans overestimate income, underestimate expenses, therefore 35% projected. Hopefully I'm going to bring home 10% at the end of the day. There's 3 kinds of fertilizer applications. Profitable ones, break-even ones, unprofitable ones. What I'm trying to do at my farm is determine what's unprofitable and then stop doing it because it doesn't do me any good. In continuous corn, we realize there's a yield penalty because we're losing some of that nitrogen and the carbon and nitrogen and all of that. And a lot of that nitrogen's still in those corn stalks, and we want to try to get it out of those corn stalks. But here's a study that I did a long time ago. And I've certainly changed now, 20 years later. But on the left side, the green bar is 0 pounds of N, grows 120 bushel corn. And then 60 pounds of N, the blue bar, is 165 bushels of corn. We picked up 45 bushels by just adding 60 pounds of N. It is phenomenal stuff. And then at 100 pounds, the purple at 179, 140 pounds at 186, and on the far right-hand side, who knows? Had we used 180 pounds. So nitrogen's very powerful stuff, and corn responds to that. So again, not to show a whole bunch of data, I'm just going to cut right to the chase. Over the years that I've been doing nitrogen studies, at my farm, $1 worth of nitrogen grows $4 worth of corn. If I did my math correctly, that is a 300% return on investment. That baby is making money. And so use your nitrogen wisely. Put some on in the fall. Put some on in the spring. Put some on with a planter. Side dress it. Whatever you can do, but just remember, nitrogen's a big player when it comes to growing corn. Step number 3, exaggeration. Gosh, I love this example. We use it all the time in everything that we do at our farm. So let's look at row spacings. On the left-hand side of the screen, you can see 45-inch rows. On the right-hand side, you can see 15-inch rows. Exaggerate it. Make it easy for the mind to understand. First off, on the left side of the screen, I'm going to say that there's a lot of sunlight that went right past the corn plant, hit the soil, didn't do me any good. The corn plant likes light, photosynthesis, and on the right-hand side of the screen, we're going to capture a lot more sunlight and use it to grow corn. Also, we're going to shade the weeds better. So let's talk about row spacings, and I hear a lot of comments about where should I go. So this little chart here on the left, the row width, 12-inch rows, and if we have a seed spacing in the middle there, 12 inches, that gives me a population of just a little over 43,000 because I'm 1 foot by 1 foot, which would be 43,560. Now let's go to 45-inch rows, and at 3 inches apart is what it would take to get me to that population of 43,000. If the plants are 3 inches apart, my God, they're competing against each other to create yield. We don't want to do that. We don't want to increase competition between plants. We want to decrease. Here's another visual. Picture's worth 1,000 words. You can see this is at 45-inch rows just at 32,000. And look at them. They're right on top of each other. They're all competing for sunlight, nutrients, and water. And that's just not going to be a good thing in long-term yields. Go the other way. Go to 15-inch rows. The rows are running left to right on this screen, and we're 15-inch rows with about a 12-inch seed space at 32,000. And it's like a square box. And we've got a plant on every corner. And if I was to make this image better, I would stagger the adjacent rows so it's a half cycle off and plant more of a diamond pattern than I would a square box. But still, you get the idea. Better weed control, less competition between plants. So it's a process of evolution. I'm a 4th generation farmer, and when I was in high school, Dad, we were hill dropping, and we were in 40-inch rows. So hill dropping means we would drop 3 kernels, and then we'd skip 20-some inches, drop 3 kernels, skip 20 inches. And you can see right here on the left-hand side of the screen, I'm a junior in high school, got my pioneer hat on. There's 3 ears right there. I'm holding one of them, huge ears. And then on the right-hand side is 2013, and I'm at Harry Stein's field out there. He's at 40-some thousand, 300 bushel the acre corn, and he's in 12-inch rows. So we're evolving as farmers. We learn from our ancestors, we try to teach our children, and we move on to the next phase. So from a yield point of view, check it out on my own farm, and I can tell you right here, 30-inch rows in the orange bar at 196, and the 15-inch rows are in the green bar at 204 bushels to the acre. So from a profitability point of view, that's $40 per acre. Again, a nice return on investment. So solid seeded corn will maximize yield. It's a grass. Maximize weed control. It's going to maximize erosion control. It's going to maximize the production of organic matter. All four of those are great. Those are things we strive for every day in our cornfields. Step 4, conflict of interest. You know, I love all my seed dealers, all my fertilizer dealers, great Christian people, but at the end of the day, their job is to sell me seed or sell me fertilizer or sell me a new piece of farm equipment. And so I kind of got to remember that when I'm buying seed and I'm choosing populations, because they're also making recommendations on how thick I should plant it. Well, at my farm, I did a study. This was done back in 2014, happens to be a Stein number. And planted at 30,000, turned out to be probably the most profitable, yield of 238. Now, when I went to 35,000, I did get an increase in yield. Now, corn seed, about $4 a thousand is what we're going to pay. So I bought $20 worth of seed, and I picked up 4 bushels of corn. So depending on how you value corn, kind of a break-even kind of a thing. Did get the yield increase, though, that they promised. But from 35,000 up to 40,000, I bought the seed, but mathematically, I lost $25 an acre. At 45,000, I'm losing $50 an acre. 50,000, I'm losing $95 an acre. And at 55,000, I'm losing 130 an acre. So really, we can all use high populations if they're done in the right spot at the right time with the right fertilizer. And don't get me wrong, there is a time and a place for high populations. At my farm, I'm still pretty good in the mid-30s. On the soybean side of things, a Pioneer, whoever might happen to be, we've done the same thing over time, and this is 6 years, 4 replications every year. So we're looking at 24 replications. And on the left side, the green bar at 50,000, and then all the way to the right-hand side is 200,000. And so, like I said, we replicate it every year. Been doing the math on it. We still think that the 50,000 is probably the most profitable. 69 bushel to acre. I bought more seed, still grew 69 bushel beans. I bought more seed at 100,000, 69 bushel beans. The light blue there, 125,000. Still 69 bushel the acre. I lost $30 doing it. 150,000, 69, 170,000, 69, and at 200,000, when you average 16 reps, why 70 bushel the acre. The object of adding input costs is to increase profitability, not just yield. Now, with all that being said, with the onset of herbicide-resistant weeds, I can, to some extent, buy some weed control in populations. So today we're running around 100,000 and trying to get the benefits, the best of both worlds, if you will. So number 5 is to do it right the first time. And this is a combine. If you're harvesting your no-till beans, one of the things that we're looking at is how can I make that combine leave less soybeans on the ground, or how do we stop the separator loss, sieve loss. So this is a very typical scenario, whether it's a red combine, a green combine, or whatever. We're going to take a look here at the grain loss monitor that's on the screen. On the left side, if I'm correct, this is out of our S680 combine. The left bar is the sieves in the lower left-hand corner. The center bar is the combination of the sieves and the rotor. And the next bar is rotor loss. And then on the far right-hand side of that screen, I believe that to be the tailings elevator, telling me the volume of material that's coming back for a second pass. So this topic is do it right the first time and you won't have to redo it. And this is very normal on a rotary machine, regardless of color. So how do we make this go away? When we're harvesting soybeans or small grains, wheat, whatever, the green pods are a threshing problem. I don't know how many years I spent setting sieves, setting the wind, doing all sorts of crazy things, never having any effect at all. And the green pods are from the threshing chamber, and we'll show you why. Filler plates going to improve that. Cover plates are going to improve that. And they don't come with the combines. They don't come with their own instruction manual. You've got to go find these things and get them put in yourself. And that's what I had to do with my combine. So here in the many years ago, you can look in the grain tank and you can see a lot of pods that never threshed. And so let's explain why does it happen? Because as that green pod comes up the feeder chain, it is going to get separated from the stalk. And I'm holding it here in this photo with my fingers, and that's a round bar concave, threshing concave that's in a green combine. And that pod is going to drop right between there, and it's going to take the path of least resistance, and it's going to fall directly down into the auger bed, going to go through the sieves. It might make it into the tailings elevator, it might go through the sieve and go into the grain tank, or it may go right out the back end of the machine. But this green pod is not getting threshed because there's no resistance, nothing to stop it to going from the feeder chain to the grain tank. It's the same way on a red combine. I'm running large wire in my older red combines. We've got one devoted to beans, we've got one devoted to corn. And you can see here's the green pods again in a large wire, and the opening or the gap is bigger than the size of the pod. So again, they're going to follow the path of least resistance. They're going to fall straight through. Same thing's going to happen on a red combine, yellow or gray, whatever. So the green folks, they do offer a filler plate, which looks like a Venetian blind, and it's a flat piece of steel that goes in between the round bars, and it'll help hold them in there and make them rub against each other, so that does help. There's the part number for it. I'm not sure that these items should be attached to the side of the combine so that I can look at it and realize when I go from corn to beans, I need to put this thing in the combine if I want it to work. Now you can go out and buy different concaves. They have large ones, medium sized, small ones for wheat, whatever. But I still don't think that's the solution because I'm shelling corn and I need all those openings. I'm looking for a fast 5-minute changeover from corn to beans, and here it is. Cover plates. These are aftermarket because I don't know that my case dealer sold them. I think they do nowadays, but anyway, it's a solid piece of steel. We call them blanks, call them cover plates, call them whatever you want. And here's Abilene Machine, I think, is one aftermarket company. There's some other ones out there, and I apologize I don't have them all listed for you. But here's what we're wanting to do is stop that green pod from free falling from the feeder chain to the auger bed. So after I finished harvest, I dropped the concave down, took this picture for you, and now you can actually see what those green pods are looking at. When they come out of the feeder chain, they're going to drop right here into this large wire concave, and you can see that the little yellow beans have been threshed. They're in between the wires, and they're just going to rub pods against pods. They're going to open up. And I can tell you this is huge because now I'm doing it right the first time. Thresh that green pod, put the soybean in the grain tank, put the pod out the back end of the combine. Step number 6, use side-by-side comparisons. It's just so much easier for the mind to understand when you can visually see it, and then you can collect the data as well. So again, this is my auto steer, plant 30-inch rows in yellow, and then we come back in, switch over to 15-inch rows, and plant the green areas in between. Come back with a yield monitor. This was done back in the late 90s. Really not that difficult, but these are all data points. And on the left there, 30-inch rows, the lower yields are in red, higher yields are in blue. Then a pass of 15s, a lot of blue, another pass of 15s. In the middle of the screen there, 30-inch rows, all red dots, 15-inch rows, all blue, 30s, all red. So you can get your yield monitor to teach you what I ought to do as I move to the future. Another side-by-side is on residue. As no-tillers, we're dealing with a lot more residue than we used to. The combine's a big part of it. And I'm looking to maximize that return on investment from my residue. So, exaggerate is another one of my thoughts. So on the left-hand side, we leave the stalks long, and on the right-hand side, we chop them up into little pieces. They're 1.25 inches long, they're sheared into 2 halves, and in the middle of the screen there, you can see the pith is opened up, and the rind of the stalk is there, but we've also sheared it into 2 halves. Now, they also say that, or on the right-hand side of the screen, it's where that's at. They also say a picture's worth 1,000 words. So this data was taken from University of Illinois, and they're under a tillage system down there. So on the left of the screen are full-size stalks, where they disc ripped and then did some spring tillage. And you can still see the stalks are, on the left side of the screen, are still there in between the row, and they haven't decomposed. Not only are they tying up last year's nitrogen that was left in the residue, but they're probably tying up some of the new nitrogen that was applied. And to prove that, just look at the base of the stalk. It's firing, lack of nitrogen. On the right-hand side of the screen here is where we chopped it up into small pieces, did some tillage, and it just melts like butter on a sidewalk on a hot afternoon. And that residue is decomposed, the nutrients are back in the soil where they belong. And you can also look at the bottom of the corn plant, and you can tell that we've got less firing. So a side-by-side picture right here shows me that I should be, for maximum yield, chopping up the residue into small pieces, get it to decompose, and the faster I can get it back into the soil, the less opportunity Mother Nature has of washing it away or blowing it away. If I leave it on top of the ground, inevitably I'm going to see a big storm. It's going to blow it or wash it away. But if I can harvest it, get it in the soil, then I get less weather events that are going to make it leave my farm. So this is what we're looking for. Shear it into 2 halves. That's, in my opinion, really helps on that corn stalk. Open the pith up. I'm also even though I'm a no-tiller, I'm a livestock farmer because I'm growing earthworms every year. And boy, they tell you they love the soft stuff at night to be able to eat it. Also, as a no-tiller, it makes it easy for me to plant. Side by side, here we are. On the left side, you can see we got the beans in the ground, but they were pretty slow because they went in shallow. On the right-hand side of the screen, into some chopped residue. Got good seed-to-soil contact, got fast, even emergence. I think to go to the extreme of residue, my buddy Dave Hula, also a no-tiller, but also works on world record corn yields. And we all know that last year he grew 616 bushel to the acre. This picture, we're with him in his farm shop with all his antiques back there as well. And when I talked to Dave on the phone, he said, Marion, I'm running a combine today, and he said the corn plants in this 600 bushel corn, they're way taller than the cab. And he said, I'm watching them go right through the row unit, and I'm looking on the ground, and they're all chopped up into little pieces. We follow with cover crops, and so therefore Dave said we were able to go right in and start drilling. So he really liked this. He really thinks this is a plus into his ability to grow the 600 bushel. Last but not least, number 7, don't believe everything you read. It's good to ask questions. And it's good to think about it. But this is going to be another combine tip. I'm pictured here with my daughter Eliza, who's a 5th generation farmer now. She farms about half of what we own. And this was one of our harvest demo days with the college students. We're trying to pass on our knowledge to help those kids. These are our test combines. So we have an older 25-year-old red combine devoted just to soybeans. We have a 10-year-old, which is a red combine on the left side of the screen, that's devoted just to corn. And then we just bought an S680 that's 5 years old that we're comparing. And we're trying to learn. You know, there's some good things about the red one. There's some good things about the green one. We're trying to cross that back and forth so we can provide more information to the American farmer about setting combines. So, and the other point I want you to do is teach the next generation. And don't wait till next year. I get a lot of phone calls. Farmers call me and say, Marion, I'm in the combine. And he said, I don't know what I'm doing. And I said, really? And he said, yeah, Dad always ran the combine. Last winter, Dad took ill and passed away. So take that opportunity, continue to pass this knowledge on to somebody as we move to the future. But here's the owner's manuals. On the left is the red combine, on the right is the green combine. And so I just love to look through their owner's manual. And so I took the red owner's manual, and on page 154 of that particular combine, the case operator's manual, under troubleshooting for setting the combine, it says that the problem is small bits of cob in the sample. Gosh, I get those at least one a day. People call, whether it's red or green, to make it different, yellow or gray. And so for solutions, they print underneath, 1, close the chafer sieve. I'm okay with that one. Try to keep the cobs out. But if I'm getting grain loss out of the sieve, that's not going to be an option. Number 2, decrease the rotor speed. Probably not a bad suggestion. But if I'm getting rotor loss, I don't think that's a super great way of getting the small cobs out of the sample. But this next one is the one that I just cannot believe. Whoever wrote this owner's manual or whoever copied it from the previous guy, I don't know where he got this idea. But he wants to close the shoe sieve. Common sense, exaggerate, all that other stuff. What does this person possibly believe he can gain by rethreshing a clean red corn cob? There is none whatsoever. There's only downside to rethreshing the cob, because if we rethresh it, it'll be smaller. And eventually it's still going to end up in the grain tank as a small bit of cob in the sample. You could go on here. They want to increase the air blast. That'll help a little bit. They'll open the concave. But the whole thing is from the start, they got it wrong. And I'm going to shoot you a video here that I did about 3 or 4 years ago. It's a very popular YouTube video in the fall. And I just happen to have everything in my mind correct. So I want you to listen to this video. And I'm going to do a job in the field of explaining how to set the combine so that we just use the top sieve and the bottom one's wide open.
Hi, my name is Marion Calmer. I'm the owner of Calmer Cornheads, Calmer's Agronomic Research Center, and also Calmer Farms. Today we have a corn harvesting message for you, and we believe it's a suggestion on maybe a different way of setting the sieves that we believe will reduce the amount of damaged grain, going to reduce the amount of sieve loss, and ultimately going to improve your ground speed. I think as we read our owner's manuals, and we all grew up setting combines, that it's going to suggest, in order to clean the cobs out of the grain tank, that the first thing to do is to go in and close the bottom sieve down to keep the cobs out of the grain tank. My humble opinion, I disagree with them, and I think it's counterproductive, because the first thing that's going to happen once we shut this bottom sieve down is we're going to decrease the amount of air, and we'd like to have that air blast come up here on the front side of the sieves, not running parallel and come out on the back side of the sieves. Number 2, it's also going to increase the amount of return, and we're going to start to send some nice shell corn on around for a second pass. So in my humble opinion, during corn harvest, there's no part of a corn kernel that needs to be rethreshed. There's certainly no part of the corn cob that needs to be rethreshed, because all that'll do is just grind it up into smaller pieces. So my tip and suggestion for you to try this fall is let's start out by opening the bottom sieve wide open. And by doing this, number 1, now the air gets to come on up through the front part of the sieve like it's designed to, and we'll get that air blast up here, because we need this area to have lots of air, because that's where most of the material is coming onto the sieves. Number 2, we're going to eliminate any return, and we're going to just allow that clean shell corn to drop right down into the clean grain elevator. And now, to clean the grain tank, we're just going to open and close the top sieve and use it as our cleaning sieve, because I really don't have any reason to let the cob drop below the top sieve to start with. So, Ultimately, we believe that this is going to result in better cleaning. We're going to end up with less separator loss, certainly going to reduce the amount of cracks that are in the grain tank, and I think finally will increase your ground speed. Hopefully you'll try it this fall, and if you have any questions at all, feel free to call me on my cell phone at 309-368-1182. If you have any corn head issues or would like information about some of our residue management parts, you can call our front office at 309-629-9000. And for more information about our company, agronomic tips, please visit our website at calmercornheads.com. So with that, I hope you found today's information valuable. Appreciate you taking time to listen to our little video here. And with that, I wish you a safe and happy harvest.
You know, I'm going to add one thing to that video from learning with our new S680 this fall. I was doing that, but I was doing it from the cab. And for those of you that run John Deere combines, and I think even some of the red combines, the top sieve, you can adjust the front, the middle, and the back, like on my red combine and the green combine. So I'm adjusting from the cab, but the problem is I need to be adjusting the other areas because I want the same air gap in the front, in the middle, and in the back. So just remember that if you're trying this at home, don't forget once you reset the top sieve, you have to reset the other areas that are manually adjusted. So anyway, as we look here at the last slide, when I'm unloading, I don't want to see any fines. I want the grain tank to look like candy corn. I don't want any cobs. I don't want any broken pieces in there. And I want to be proud of what I'm hauling to the elevator. I want to be proud of what I'm selling to whoever's buying it, whether it's a cattle producer or whatever, because with fines and cobs, all that does is lead to grain spoilage in our bins or at our elevators, and that's not a quality product. So to recap, 7 steps to better agronomic no-till thinking. Number 1, let's use some common sense. If I spread fertilizer on top, that's where it's going to stay, the P and the K. And I've got to change my operation. Project 35% return on investment. We need to continue to make money as our farm economy tightens up from year to year. Exaggerate. Make it easy for the mind to understand. If you're wondering about changing row spacings, I think as my daughter comes into the operation, we're looking at 20-inch strip till for corn, also 20-inch strip till for soybeans, and let's blow that P and K down in the ground where the roots are going to be feeding. Also, conflict of interest. Just remember whether they're selling you farm machinery, fertilizer, seed, whatever, chemicals. Remember, that is their job, and they are good at it. Number 5, do it right the first time. Green pods, thresh them. Don't let them go from the feeder chain to the grain tank. There's no upside. Put in a solid piece of steel, hold them in the chamber, make them rub against each other. They will open. They will be lima beans, but at least you'll get them out of the pod. Number 6, side-by-side comparisons, whether it's agronomic, whether it's mechanical. I really don't care. But I got to be learning things as I move into the future. I can't be standing still. I'm not going to get anywhere. Number 7, last but not least, don't believe everything you read. Try it out yourself. Visit with a neighboring farmer. Look for some extra advice. So with that, I want to say thanks for tuning in today. Certainly an unusual scenario that we've all been put into. I also want to say thanks again to the Lessiter people, all their sponsors. They're doing a good job of keeping us informed, keeping us educated as we move into the future. And I very much look forward to seeing you next year at the National No-Tillage Conference, which I believe will be in Louisville, Kentucky in 2022. I want to see each and every one of you there in person. If you have any questions about today's presentation, feel free to call me on my cell phone, 309-368-1182. And with that, I hope you keep it safe, stay healthy, and stay happy. And we'll see y'all next year. Thank you.